Hello everyone. Thank you so much for being here today for the session of MASA Talks. I will be doing the introduction today in the name of Shirin. So I'm really happy to be creating this MASA Talks series. MASA Talks is a series of encounters run by the Atassi Foundation. We're doing this conversation since September of last year. We're really happy to create this monthly encounter to invite some scholar, artist family, or investigator to talk about modern art in Syria, but also Arab modern art in general, and the relation of Arab modern art with archive. We are really happy because since the beginning of this project, we created a community around Arab art and its archive, and we would like to thank all of the people we invited, but also all of you being participating to this conversation. So here's the idea of the conversation is always to invite someone and to have a conversation. As most of you know, the idea is that we will have a conversation first with Olga, and then we will give you the floor. If you have question, we will be happy to answer it. So thank you all of you for being here. And now I will be introducing all participants today. So we are really happy to invite Dr. Olga Nefedova today, which is the director of ASUU Foundation. So Olga Nefedova is an art historian. She's an associate professor at the School of History at ASUU University in Moscow, and a graduate of the Institute of History and Theory of Art. She obtained a PhD on the subject of the 18th century Orientalist art movement. So we will discuss about our current project research, which focuses on Arab art students in the USSR and the history of Arab-Soviet cultural relation. And also we will discuss about the creation of the platform ASUU Foundation that we will discuss later. So Olga Nefedova is the founder and director of this platform, ASUU, Arab Art and Arab Artists in the Soviet Union, which is an online research project, virtual collection of digital resources, including archive, books, essay, which is available for use by students, scholars, and the general public. The project has been conceived with the aim of preserving the history of modern Arab art relating to the period between 1950 and 1991 and connected with the cultural diplomacy between our Arab world and the USSR. So it was important for us to invite also, as you know, other archival platform. So thank you so much, Olga, for being here today. And maybe I can give you the floor to discuss about your research and your investigation. And maybe my first question would be what first drew you to the subject of Syrian artists who studied in the Soviet Union, and why is this chapter of art history unknown today?
Thank you very much, Mathilde, for the introduction. And Shireen, thank you very much for inviting me to take part in this series and to give me a chance to share my story, the story of my research, and the story of this digital platform. The research is more than 12, 14 years old. I started like a long time ago. The platform is relatively new, and I'm doing my best to promote it as much as I can. Yeah, so it's all started actually first with the art exhibitions. I was interested in cross-cultural relations, and I'm showing here just briefly 4 posters from 4 exhibitions I randomly selected. The first one is actually one of the first exhibitions ever to take part in the Soviet Union, Arab art and Arab artists. It's Syrian Fine Art Exhibition, 1957. And then there is a poster of Iraqi art exhibition, 1959, Iraqi Realist, 77, Palestinian art, 79. There were, of course, other exhibitions. Gradually, There was also a question about Arab artists that were educated in the Soviet Union because they participated in these exhibitions. And I was wondering who were these artists, how many were there, where did they study? And very briefly, I will tell you about this program very briefly because it's a long story. It all started in the 1950s when the Soviet Union created a dedicated program, exchange program, inviting Arab students, not necessarily art, but all Arab artists, scholars from around the world to study in the Soviet Union. Among art institutions, we had two very active, the Surikov Art Institute and the Moscow State Stroganov Academy. And there were other. There were, of course, other institutions. There were more, for example, the Repin Academy in St. Petersburg, in Tashkent, in Tbilisi, and in other cities where Arab artists could get their education. And the first question was, I know it will sound a little bit probably boring, but it's about methodology, how to study this subject, how to approach this subject. And there were two main methods which I used. First, archives, and here is the list of archives I visited physically. Yeah, I had to go there. It's of course in Russia, in Lebanon, in Jordan, and online platforms, and they were vital. Modern Art Iraq Archive, run by Dr. Nada Shabut. Your platform was extremely useful for my research, and plus one more platform, Signs of Conflict, collection of posters. And the second method, interviews. I conducted them where I could meet these artists, former art students. All majority of them, I had to do them via Zoom, yeah, for a number of years. And this interviews a primary actually data of my research, because not only you get um, some information, but you capture the respondents' perspectives. You can hear their voices, they learn about their experiences, relations, and their interpretations. So that was all very interesting, and this definitely helped me to create, at first of all, a list of these art students. And the first one arrived in 1959, the last one, obviously, in 1991. We are talking about the collapse of the Soviet Union, so we have these number of years. And I don't know if you're going to be surprised or not, but there were more than 100 Arab art students who studied in the Soviet Union and got their education there. Countries. There were students from Algeria, Bahrain, Egypt, Iraq, Iraqi Kurdistan, Kuwait, Lebanon, Palestine, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen. So these are the countries. Students from these countries studied in the Soviet Union. And again, briefly to say that when I say Arab artists, I don't mean an ethnic group. That's an umbrella term, actually, which we use, meaning that the students were not necessarily ethnically Arabs, but they were born, raised, and educated in Arab states. So if we talk about, here I have an archival, a selection of photographs, various photographs, various students from different countries. You can, there are captions, so you can see who is what and when. So just a little bit of history. So the first art students, the first Arab undergraduate students came to study in the Surikov Art Institute in September 1959. And both of them were Syrians. We have Milad Sheikh and we have Abdelmanan Shamma. They both studied in the first one studied in the workshop of easel paintings, and the second in the workshop of monumental art. How students came to the Soviet Union, how could they enroll? They were different ways. So the easiest one is to obtain a full scholarship, and that was done through memorandum of understandings or MOUs or agreements signed between. And the quota, students' quota would be mentioned there, 100 students, 300 students. So that was the easiest and the simplest way. Obviously, there were such agreements between the Soviet Union and Syria, the Soviet Union and Egypt, the Soviet Union and Iraq. There were other ways when students could join based on recommendations of various public organizations and NGOs, such as Soviet Afro-Asian Solidarity Committee, or I don't know, the Soviet Women's Committee, the Union of Palestinian Women. They all had small quotas, and they could also help students to enroll. There were also cases, and I know these cases, when students applied directly through the Soviet embassy, and that were also successful cases. And sometimes there were other less clearly defined channels, usually through local communist or pro-communist parties, when students could join and could join the art institutes in the Soviet Union. But art education, it was very important for the Soviet state. It was a matter of prestige to give foreign students the best that the Soviet education could offer. So the program was attractive, and it was one of the reasons why students happily joined these art institutions. First of all, free tuition, yeah, free medical care. Also, undergraduate and postgraduate students received a monthly stipend, and it was quite a good amount. And I can tell you that it was the double amount of what the Soviet students received. So it was not such a bad amount of money. They also had annual allowance to buy technical scientific literature. And they had very interesting one-time allowance, and that was granted. So who could get it? Arab students and Latin American students. There was a very special allowance to buy warm clothes, because when they arrived, well, the climate was very different. So they had special allowance, a generous one, I would say 300 rubles to buy warm clothes. What else? Hostel accommodation was also available for free. Opportunity to visit the sanatoria, for example, during summer. And at the end of the educational period, the Soviet state covered all transportation expenses back to their home countries. What else? There were plenty of extracurricular activities, not only visits to museums, libraries, concerts, and theaters. Also, in the 60s and 70s, Arab students would travel around the Soviet Union. Again, all travel expenses were covered by the state. And from their memoirs and from their letters, I know that they visited Almaty, St. Petersburg, Riga, Rostov, Tashkent, Tbilisi, Yerevan, and other cities. So they traveled quite extensively. The story of their memories, the story of their impressions, it's quite interesting, but it's very long. I just can tell you that overall, they always talked, even though there were, of course, challenges and problems and certain issues, but they talked only with kind words and praise their mentors in the institutes, and actually talked very nicely about the students' years. And but I guess that's because they were young, and because when we are students, we always remember like good things. And I would say that despite the challenging conditions of their life in the Soviet Union, nostalgia for those years was widespread among the former art students. Another interesting thing that not all of them, but I would say around 70%, that they still speak very good Russian. A few words about students' graduation works. And probably it's interesting to see what were their projects. Yes, they did have to study within the framework of socialist art education. So there were certain limitations. But Arab artists, they did find their sources of inspiration in their local traditions, first of all and foremost. That is very often they were selecting subjects that were connected to the rhetoric of national identity, discovering their probably new methods of expression within the aesthetics of their countries. So what would be the subject matters of their graduation works? The portraits, the landscapes, there was everyday life, that there were subjects of anti-colonialism, modernization, liberation, and so on. But all the artworks, they were quite distinct. Among subjects, and you have seen already, and I will show you a few more, of course, there was subject of the occupation of Palestine. The students also shared sometimes, how to say, the stories of the land's occupation, the loss of their lands, the representations of revolutionary fighters, dramatic war events. Well, and unfortunately, they were quite common subject in their students' projects. Sometimes there would be folkloric sources. Yeah, sometimes they would go back to the literature, and such subjects were also very popular. And what I can tell you is that regardless of the subject and what they were depicting, the artworks definitely effectively documents of its time, reflecting and social historical context, and telling us about the time when they were studying and when they received their education. When they went back home, so what happened then? After receiving education, there were a few for them trajectories. What could they do? First of all, they went to teach. A lot of them taught in rural art schools. A lot of them were trying to teach in universities. Not all of them could practice as artists for various reasons. I would say 70% had to abandon their art practices. And again, the main reasons that they had to move. They moved to other countries because of various political situations, whether in Iraq and Yemen and Syria. And there they had to find another job, sometimes not related to art at all. And it's for a number of my interviews, they were quite sad because they were telling me about how inspired they were during their study years, but unfortunately they had to abandon their art education. What else? What's interesting that a number of students, they faced problems with the Soviet certificate. And in certain countries, just to give you Lebanon as an example, they had certain issues finding job and with the Soviet certificate, but that was more of a political reason. Other than that, as you can see also, the sad story is, and the captions are there, that a lot of works, that graduation works, vacation, are currently unknown or lost. And these images, these archival materials, actually, it's the only story, the only evidences of the students' art education, of their achievements, yes, and of their endeavors, artistic endeavors, unfortunately. Briefly, that's it. So, Philip, if you have questions or you want me to
Yes, maybe my first question would be about this archival material that is actually proof of the existence of pieces that are lost. They were given to you by the artists.
Well, this is interesting. Yeah, this is how it's all actually, from the very beginning. So when you start your research, and I had nothing, no list, no names. I had only two names, and and because I knew these artists. It's Raya Al-Baksami from Kuwait and the FIFA Alebi from Iraq. So I knew them. So yeah, but that's it. No more, no list, nothing. So I went to the institute, and the first one was the Surikov Art Institute. And I think, like everywhere, it's all about connections and relations. You know somebody here, you know somebody there, they introduce you to someone. And then this person introduced me to the Department of Foreign Students Relations in the Institute. They had very little material, and again, dated post-Soviet from 2000 and onward, and I wanted the old one. So they introduced me to an very old retired lady who used to work there. And she had this black and white photographs of their graduation works, like Asim al-Basha. I mean, he doesn't have this picture, it's 100%, but I do have it. Yeah. And for example, Shamsuddin Faris also. This is Iraqi artist. This artwork is destroyed. Nazim Irani, Mahmoud Ahmed. These are all black and white photographs from these archives. So this is how it all actually started. Artists, a few of them only, had images of their art graduation artworks, and I'm still looking for these artworks, and I hope I manage to locate more and more of
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Maybe I would have a question for you before we speak to the platform, because we can also read, and I invite the audience to read your excellent paper about Arab artists who studied in the USSR during the 50s, 70s, and 70s. In this paper, you show that Soviet art school became important space, and you just told us, of artistic exchanges across the Mediterranean. You also mentioned the role of Palestinian uh, students, and also the importance of Palestinian for the students. And in this paper, you ask the question, why do Arab artists select the Soviet Institute as their alma mater, and why, when they could have gone to Paris or Rome, they did go to Moscow? Could you maybe answer this question for us today?
Thank you very much, Mathilde. Yes, that was actually one of the first questions. So why did you even go there? What were your decisions? What happened behind these decisions? And I had my own kind of explanations for before I interviewed artists, but once you interview them more and more, then the picture changes. So the first reason is so pragmatic. I mean, it was free education. The education was free. There was a stipend. There was a accommodation provided, and students who had no connections, who had no funds, who came from rural areas sometimes, yeah, who had no government scholarships. They were very happy to get a chance to study art in the Soviet Union. So the first reason, in majority of cases, it was this very practical and pragmatic attitude. The second reason, I would say, yes, there were Arabs who were at least not even pro-communist, and they were in the mood of these communist ideas, and they had strong desire to visit this mysterious country of people for people and experience this life in the communist state. Of course, they had somewhat romanticized image of it, and they was sort of disappointed, of course. I mean, with a way of life, but not with art education. Then the way I heard cases that they traveled because they loved, for example, Russian art and Russian culture, Russian literature. For example, a book illustration. I know one of the students, he came to study book illustration specifically because he was very fond of this art. We also have cases when students followed because of love. For example, Soraya Baksami went to the Soviet Union to follow her husband, who got the scholarship first. So there were various reasons.
Okay, thank you. And also, maybe we'll talk about it later, but you are saying that a lot of them studied in Russia, but then they came back in the origin countries. Some of them stayed in Russia?
Yes. Okay. First of all, those who were undergraduates, a number of them continued their studies and became postgraduates. They stayed in the Soviet Union and just spent there quite a long time. But I guess it's the same like everywhere. After you finish your studies, you have to leave. So your residency permit is over, and you have to travel. We had cases when a few students they got Soviet citizenship, but they were political reasons for that. For example, Iraqi students, yes, after the Ba'athist revolution of 1963. A number of them stayed in the Soviet Union and got Soviet citizenship. But a few students got married and they stayed with their families. But from art students, to be honest, I think after they finished their postgrad studies, they all left. Yeah.
Okay.
Except, I'm sorry, no, just a few is still here. Feiruz Hezi is still here and she lives not far from Moscow.
Okay, thank you. Maybe my question would be also a transition to go to the presentation of the ASUU Foundation platform, because working on Arab artists who studied and lived in the Soviet Union often means dealing with dispersed and sometimes inaccessible archive. What are the main archive? I mean, you mentioned at the beginning that you visited some archive and you also had interviews in the methodology. But how did all the material you gathered in your research became an archival platform?
Yes, thank you, Mathilde, again. And you see, my interest in maybe I can even start here just to show it as a picture. Yeah. So my interest in the subject first arose back in the 1990s. But the problem existed when I lived in Kuwait. I lived in Kuwait and then lived in So, but the problem existed even then and has persisted almost to the present day. You need to be physically in Russia to carry out this research. So the interest was there, but in order to start it, I mean, I had to relocate basically. The digitization of archives in Russia is proceeding very, very slowly, or I would say actually it's not proceeding, but extremely slowly. And the digitization of books is even slower. So there is nothing you can find nothing you could find online. So I had physically to visit archives and libraries and to search and to dig around and so on. So this not only complicates the research process itself, but there was another big problem. It also complicates its expansion and integration into the international system of research into Arab art and the works of Arab artists. And these are not my words, and you might even argue with me, but I think that our knowledge of the 20th century Arab art is fragmented. Even though it's a recent history, I don't think we see like the whole picture. It is fragmented. We know a lot here and there, but because of so many reasons and political and social and economical and so on, our knowledge is fragmented. So it was precisely for that reason that a year ago, I decided a little bit more than that. I decided to create this platform. And because I heard many times from my colleagues, those who work on Arab art and Arab artists, that they wish they would know these facts, or they wish they would have access to these books, or they wish something. And I thought it would be very important to share whatever I have collected so far. It's all this archival material that I have, books that I have, and to put it online. And now, with the help of AI, yeah, translation is becoming accessible and straightforward, and it's getting easier and easier to make use of this material. So if you even like, I will show now that I have books now with AI, you can easily translate them and read this text. And I hope that this knowledge about Arab art and Arab art students in the Soviet Union, it just becomes becomes accessible, and that researchers and scholars and whoever is interested can use this on daily basis.
Thank you. Now maybe you can present us the platform.
So the platform. Thank you so much. I will try to open the website. Mhm. I think you can see it, yeah? Just
Yes.
checking. Yes. So it's all happened with the help of my friends, sometimes former students, and so it's I don't know, maybe it doesn't look like 100% professional, but we did our best. So this is our archival research project. You can read about it. We have our Instagram page where we are uploading news and telling what's happening, and if we have new books or new essays or something else happens here. in the platform. And then I have 4 main groups: e-archive, e-library, e-video, and e-scholar. E-video, it will happen soon. It's not yet there. We are working on our platform rather slowly. I have the documentaries from 1960s and 1970s about Arab students in the Soviet Union. They're quite interesting. I have to sort out copyright issues, and I think I'm nearly there. And then I will upload these videos, and everyone can see them and watch them. Then we have eScholar. eScholar, I'm just uploading or giving links to various essays about Arab art and Arab artists in the Soviet Union. Not so many, unfortunately, scholars have been writing about it. We have Anahel Vizomarino with a wonderful, amazing research on Yemeni art students. We have my essays there, and I do hope there will be more and more. Very soon, there will be a few articles about Arab art exhibitions in the Soviet Union, and I will definitely upload them here. E-library, and this is something like I'm very proud of. This is a library where you can literally, like, you have one of the, actually, it's not one of the first, it's the first art catalog of an art exhibition, and that's the Syrian and Egypt exhibition of 1959. So you press it, and then you get the book, and then you can just read it. You flip it over, and then the book is here. So you can just read it and flip the pages. And there are plenty of books in this library, and step by step, we are scanning, digitizes, and uploading more of them, including, for example, Anatoly Bogdanov, Artist of Syria, the first book dedicated to Syrian art in the Soviet Union. It's also there, and you can read it if you want. And another very important part of the platform is actually its e-archive. It will have 3 parts. It will have personal archives, and I'm now talking to a few former art students that they give us access to their archives, and we can digitize these archives and upload them. I will have archives on Arab art students in the USSR, those materials that I have collected so far. And so I will have their names, and then whatever I have, I will upload, and everyone can see these papers and so on. And Arab art exhibitions in the Soviet Union. Again, it is still under kind of construction. And the only exhibition I have uploaded so far, it's Iraqi art exhibition in Moscow, Baku, Odessa in 1959. So you open it here. A little bit of story. If I have a reference, there is a reference, and then you click, and then again, it's in a kind of like a bunch of archival materials with all the newspapers, newspaper clips, archival lists, packing lists, everything related to Iraqi art exhibition of 1959. So here we are. Please read, enjoy, and share, and follow us.
Thank you so much for the presentation of this platform. Maybe now I think we should maybe stop sharing the screen because I think the connection is not so perfect. And maybe we can just open the conversation. I would just have a last question for you, Olga. Thank you so much for this brilliant presentation. Maybe I would ask you about the main challenges in building and maintaining an archive of this kind. I ask you this question, but we know from our perspective that there is a lot of challenges, and maybe I would ask you what challenges are you facing now, or have you faced about the creation of such an archive?
Well, you see, it's you know it very well, yes, and your platform, another platform, it's a full-time job to run it. It's not something you can just do it on during weekends or from time to time. It is time consuming. It's a proper job. It's a teamwork, ideally. Looking for this material, scanning this material, uploading this material. So one of the main challenges is time. I wish I could be dedicating more time to this platform, but I am doing my best. Second, and this is another big challenge. I'm sorry to talk about it, but it's finances. And it's not just the web page that actually, thanks God, yes, it's not that expensive, but actually the design, the maintenance, and all those flip books and videos and everything. It's the book scanning costs actually quite a lot of money. So this also is a challenge, and the platform is $3 it's used. But again, it's mainly time and teamwork. I wish I could have more people. I will look into this if probably my former students could join me. But this is challenge like actually number one.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Olga. I'm sorry I put off my camera because I think the connection was not so good, but I'm still here. There is a question here from Suzanne to Olga. So Suzanne, I will read your question. Donc, she just first said, fantastic project, congratulations on this initiative. And she's asking you, Olga, I know that the study is still work in progress, but at this point, are there general characteristics that are common to those artists who studied in the Soviet Union aesthetically or politically or otherwise?
Um,
You can see the question in the chat.
well, if this question related to art specifically, yes, Susan, if you could little bit like elaborate, do you mean their artworks, or what are you talking about? No, so if talking about artists, common. No, they all received education within the strict school of socialist realism. Yeah, that's something very common. But then I know artists who actually progressed a lot, developed their art language and went different ways. So I would say no. I would say that the only thing that was and that is common, this very strong school of academism, realism. That's definitely, yeah, it's there. But then no, those who practiced art, I would say they all develop quite differently. But sadly, it's only 30% of them. 70% of these artists abandon their art careers. So it's not that many artists that I can talk about practicing artists right now. Huh? Not so many, fortunately. Yeah.
Okay, so Suzanne is thanking you. Is there another question from the audience to Olga? I would have plenty of questions, but if there is more question from the audience, maybe my question would be first about some of the Syrian artists that you mentioned today. I mean, if there some histories that you believe is nice to share. For example, the book of Anatoly Bogdanov that you shared. Sorry if I say his name. There is a lot of actually works of Syrian artists that are from the Damascus National Museum. So, do you think there was also connection between the Ministry of Culture in Syria and some schools, or the faculty of Damascus and some schools in Soviet Union? Is there some archive about this relation and also more diplomatic relations in the archive that you have been studying?
Yeah, well, the Soviet-Syrian relations probably were one of the strongest ones. So, yeah, there were plenty of exhibitions. And as I mentioned, one of the first exhibitions of Arab art in the Soviet Union actually was Syrian art, 1957, as early as that. So, there were plenty of connections, there were plenty of exhibitions. And I know that exhibitions traveled to Damascus, to Syria, and I know that artists also exhibited in the Soviet Union. So, and usually, especially for Bogdanov book, I mean, he would use the images of the artworks that were displayed in the Soviet Union, usually in the Museum of Oriental Art. So actually, this also helps us to know which works were on display. So yes, probably they were from the collection of the Moscow's National Museum, Art Museum, and so on. Probably Syrians represented one of the largest students groups in the Soviet Union, not only art, but other disciplines as well. So yes, there were a lot of connections. And I know that as far as I know, I'm still to study on the Syrian artists. So far, I've concentrated more on Palestinians, to be honest, on Iraqis and on Iraqi Kurdish artists. But Syrians, I will study a lot quite soon. And as far as I know, Abdulmanan Shama was teaching for many, many years and in art academy in Damascus, as far as I know. And he was a student of legendary Alexander Deimeka, one of the grand figures of the Soviet art. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this question. We have a question, a lot of questions in the chat. We have the first question from Zeina Alzir, who is saying, "Hello, Olga. I'm also amazed at the amount of work that you undertook to develop this archive. My question, were there programs for the government of the USSR that aim to encourage students to involve in political groups or the same?"
No. And the Soviet state was afraid of these groups, and no political involvement, no political activities, nothing like this. The only thing that was encouraged when students arrived, especially the first students from 1960s, they would create so-called Zemlячество, so unions based on nationality. So Iraqis with Iraqis, Syrians with Syrians. Oops, sorry. I think I have some. Yeah. Syrians with Syrians and so on. So these groups, they were quite useful, yeah, because these groups helped other students to integrate easily, helped them to find like how to start their life in the Soviet Union, how to this bureaucracy thing. So these groups, these national based groups, they were very helpful, and institutes would keep in touch with these groups and would actually encourage the members of these groups to come to institute and to talk to students. Political activity, no, they were no encouragement of such. Plus, don't forget, I mean, the education was actually in Russian, and students studied Russian language only for 1 year, and that was never enough to learn a language to be able to talk fluently and easily. So, of course, there was a challenge of communication also. So from political point of view, no, there was nothing like this.
Thank you, Olga. Thanks a lot. We have also a question from Stephanie. Hello and lovely work. Are there any Syrian Armenian in the archive? Also, the story goes both ways. Armenian painter Razdan Tokmakjian moved to Aleppo and taught painting at the Syrian Academy. And Stephanie is also sending a link. So maybe the main question would be, are there any Syrian Armenian in the archive?
Well, the first student, Milad Shab, as far as I know, he is of Syrian origin. And he was painting, he was very famous icon painter in Malula. So, yes. The answer is
Okay.
yes.
Okay, and there is also a question from Jenny. So Jenny is saying, thanks for sharing your very interesting work. I wonder, were there links built with any specific place in the Soviet Union that are now not in Russia, like places in the Central Asia, Georgia, Armenia, etc.? I think you mentioned, for example, Yerevan.
Yes, of course, and even the photographs. I'm talking at the Soviet Union. Yes, in Tbilisi, and there was one of the images. I'm working on the research of Arab art students in Tashkent, in Uzbekistan. in Tbilisi, so Georgia, in Kiev and Kharkov, there were art students, Arab art students. Yes, there were other art centers, but not that many, but they were. Not, I would say around 7 other art centers. Surikov and Stroganov were the first one and with the largest number of students, yeah, for especially the Surikov. But yes, there were other centers. Yeah.
Thank you. I think here we can mention that in the MASA archive, we have a folder of photograph of Mahmoud Hamad, and he did a trip in Yerevan in the later 70, I think. Maybe no would correct me if it's not the same the good date, but I think yes, there is a relation between also with Yerevan or with other places. We have a question again of Suzanne, which is asking you, Olga. I wonder if comparing your findings with those of Margaret Litvin on Arab writer in the Soviet Union could be helpful for your research on the Arab visual artists.
No, not really. They're two different trajectories, but of course, I know Margaret that with her wonderful work on Arab writers. It's like the books that she has published recently. Mm, Different, there is something, of course, in common, but there are different art institutions, different conditions. But if we look at the bigger picture, general picture of Arab students or of literature and art and other cultural studies, then yes, it would be quite interesting to merge, yeah, this knowledge, and then to get much we could get a better picture. Yeah, but her is only about writers, and a wonderful research. I did listen to a few of her presentations, and I read her books. Yeah. And Shirin,
Yes, and there is a question of Shirin, which she was asking. Uh, she's saying, amazing work, Olga. What research do you hope would come on this primary material repository?
I hope I can write a book one day. I'm writing, contributing and writing articles and essays. I hope to be able to write a book one day. Again, I need time for this. And I hope to curate an exhibition. I want to show these artworks. There are not that many, like a few, but I hope there is a chance to show these artworks, the graduation projects, for example, or at least early works of these Arab art students. And I'm sure that there will be plenty of surprises, when people can see these artworks.
Please keep us updated of the evolution of this project. Also, we mentioned last time we met that it would be also nice and interesting to see maybe relation of artists who went to other countries, not in the USSR, but for example in GDR.
Yeah.
I mean, are you thinking of maybe opening the framework on this investigation and the ASUU Foundation, or do you think it will be strictly related to Soviet Union and with the dates that you mentioned that are 1950, 1991?
Look, I mean, for me, that's more than definitely like enough, because it's
Yes,
just a
it's a
huge
lot.
amount of material. Honestly, yeah, that's really a lot. And I would just stay with the Soviet Union. I know there are colleagues actually working on art students in GDR, working on art students in Hungary, working on the history of art students in Czechoslovakia, I think in Slovenia. I know that there are other scholars working on art students in the Eastern Bloc, and their research is very interesting. Different stories, very different stories, different results, different approaches, different educational programs, but the picture overall becomes more like really intriguing and very interesting. So I would stay within the Soviet Union. It's huge enough, and 59 to 91, it's a long period. For the time being, it's 59 to 79. And then gradually, as they are opening archives, because we also have certain restrictions, you have to have 50 years. Yeah, there's certain archival regulations. So they're opening these archives slowly, year by year. So there's still a lot to do.
Perfect. Thank you.
But can I ask a question? It's easier for me
Yeah.
to to speak it out than type it with my shoulder. So I believe education was used as a soft power, so to speak, by the USSR, targeting all of these Arab countries and what have you. Has this stopped at any point in the 90s, or what happened after that? I know that a lot of the artists were now, but since the fine art academies opened in the Arab world, in particular in Syria, it was in the early 1960s, 1963, I think, or 61. I always get myself confused. But when did it stop, and how has that kind of carried forward into the following decades?
Well, thank you, Shirin. It's a really wonderful question. You're absolutely right. Because there were not that many art schools in the Arab world. There were, of course, like in Cairo, yes, and so on, but there were not that many. That's why there were more Arab art students in the 60s and 70s and even 80s. And this is the same reason why there were no Egyptian art students. There were Egyptian postgraduates, but art students, none, because they had very strong art school in Cairo. So yeah. And gradually, again, more art schools and so on. And you don't need to go and study in the Soviet Union. You don't need to be a post-undergrad. For postgrad, yes, we had them 80s and even 90s. Postgrads are still coming. Undergraduates, just a few. It was one of the soft power tools. And to be honest, I think it was very successful. Because at least when I talk to students, overall and in generally, good stories, good memories, interesting time. So it did work. 91 collapsed for the Soviet Union, so many problems in modern Russia. And of course, there was the soft power and Arab soft power. That was the last thing they were thinking about. And nowadays, I would say we are not, well, we overall, I would say in Russia, not doing enough when I talk about Russian Arab cultural relations. And this is one of the reasons why I created this platform, because the material I have gathered so far, archival, well, sorry, that nobody needs it here. That's the problem. And I have tried to encourage my students to work on this research. There is no interest. And there are again reasons, because the collection of Arab art is tiny, the one we have in Russia. It's nice, cute, sweet, but it's tiny. No Arab art community here, no big Arab art exhibitions here. So where would you get this interest? From nowhere. There is a lot of interest in China now. Yes, you have China, you have everywhere. But Arab world, no. Unfortunately, I wish we have more, and I don't know, communications, exhibitions, and so on. But unfortunately, yeah, this program is not there anymore. It's
But
definitely not the way it used to be.
yeah, but mind you, if you couple that with the programming that the cultural center, let's say again in Damascus, there was a Soviet cultural center in Damascus, and that was incredibly active as well.
Active, yeah.
So if you couple the two, I think you can probably at some stage be able to, as a researcher, not you, but any researcher, going back to the question that Suzanne kindly, I think it was Suzanne, who asked, so what is the difference, or is there any difference, whether it's in art or even in the way they worked or in their careers or their trajectories, between artists who went and studied in France, in Rome, for instance, versus those who went to the USSR? And how was the Soviet Cultural Center, for instance, in Damascus, how was it positioned in terms of the link with the USSR after these students went back to their home countries? So I guess what I'm saying is your work is incredible. And I always applaud any archiving initiative, especially of primary materials like this. But the reason why I'm saying all of this is because this is raw material for a lot of people to come and work with it and to supplement it. It does not, even with MASA, the way we do it, we're not doing MASA because it's nice to have an archive. We're doing MASA so that people can actually elaborate on that, whether it's in terms of material or elaborate on research subjects. So we're giving the primary materials, and you're giving the primary materials, and I hope that researchers would be in a position to use all of these to put together, and all the archives, or Nada Shambout's archive, or the Mawrid archive, or the Palestinian Museum's archive, put all of that together, and we can draw a beautiful picture of that era
Yeah.
on multiple levels, I think. Sorry, I'm going on.
And I think
Yeah, I should have typed that, so it would have been shorter. I promise you.
No, you're absolutely right. The question, who was more successful? I mean, I could go hours and hours about this, but I'm not. I just tell you, those who got education in Paris and Rome, they were definitely more successful. And there were reasons for that. It's a long story, but it's more about education. But I would say, yes, those who studied in Europe,
Yeah.
they
I'm not interested in who was successful. I'm more
No,
interested.
it's not even about the successful financial. It's a
Yeah.
problem of education in the
Yeah.
Soviet Union.
Yeah.
That, let me put it this way, did not give students enough tools.
Mm.
I did not teach them how to use these tools. When you go back, and I'm talking about exhibitions, donors, collectors,
Yeah.
biennales, and so on. Because in the Soviet Union, you had one collector of one, it was the state. So
That's
of course, when you go back and you kind of compete nicely, art compete with your colleagues, and you don't know how to use these tools, you kind of
Yeah.
lose,
Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
is what I mean. I don't mean they were better technically wise. No, it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm also interested in how to see how their impact on future generations, especially those who went back and taught in
Yeah.
the academies, I think it's really interesting. I could ask you questions forever, but maybe I should just leave the chance for others to ask.
There is one more question. Yes, from Jenny.
maybe I can read it and then you can answer.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. If we think of other regions as well, were the numbers of Arab art students coming to the USSR larger or smaller than of, for example, art students from India or countries in Africa? I think in your presentation you mentioned Latin American students, but I think Jenny
No. Only Arabs. I study only the specifically Arabs. And but going through files, because I had to go through files and see all the enrollment papers of all the students, art students, and so on. Look, I really can't tell you the number. I know that there were a lot of our students from Africa. I can't remember a lot from India, art students, only art students. But I remember a lot from Latin America. I remember students from Iran. I remember students from Turkey, but I did not write them down. This is another big thing. I hope someone can kind of elaborate on this research and then look at other students. There were art students from Bangladesh, So please let someone come and kind of continue this research and develop it further. Because I looked only at Arabs, but there were plenty of other nationalities, 100%, plenty of other nationalities.
Thank you so much, Olga.
Thank
Do we have other questions from the audience?
The audience is tired.
Yes, and maybe hot. So we have some congratulations from Suzanne. Well, I joined the congratulation of the audience, and I would like to thank you again very much, Olga, for your presence. Maybe I would have a last question to know what today are you waiting for people, or are you opening people to send you information if, for example, in the audience there is someone who knows thing or who have some material to share or some publication of the, for example, Soviet art center in Damascus. Would it be possible to send it to you so we can contribute to the
Please.
platform?
I'm more than I will be like overwhelmed, to receive more information and to receive, I don't know, documents. If you have any scanned books or something, more than happy. Please share with me, because I will definitely upload it and let other people use it. Please, any photographs, anything else, any archival material related to Arab art students in the Soviet Union or Arab Soviet cultural relations. Please send.
Thank you. So I think we can close now the conversation about this with this open call. And I don't know, Shireen, if you want to have the last word for this conversation today.
Actually, I just want to say I always enjoy talking about archives and discovering new things. So all the best to Olga, and I hope we stay in touch. I'm sure there's a lot that we can talk about, and I hope everyone enjoyed. And thank you for joining. Yeah,
Thank you very much again, and wishing everyone good
super.
evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.